Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Hare Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Go, Hari Go, Hari Go, Nitai Gaura Hari Go. Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 31. Narada instructs the Prachetas, and today's verse is number 20. Apahata sakalesha namalatmani aviratam edita bhavanopahutaha
Aviratam edita bhavano pahutaha
janavasagatvam atmano yan
nija janavasgatvam atmano vayan
nasarati chitravad aksharasatam hi.
nasarati chitravad aksharaha saram hi.
Anyone like the verse, please go ahead.
Abhata sakaleshana malatmane abhiratam edita bhavano pahutaha
Nija
janavasgatvam atmano vayan
nasarati
nasarti chidravad aksharaha satam hi.
apahata
Sakalashana malatmane
aviratam
aviratam edita bhavano pahutaha
nija janavasagat atmanoyan nasarati chitravadaksarahat satam apahata sakale
sakaleshana malatmane
aviratam
edita bhavano pahutaha
nija janavasagatvam atmanoyan nasarati chitravadaksara satam hi. Would anyone on Zoom like to chant?
Abhata sakaleshana atmalamane
Apahata sakaleshana malatmani
aviratam edita bhavano pahutaha
aviratam
nijjan vasgatvam atmano yan
nija janavasagatvam
nasarti chidvad akshara satam hi.
nasarati
Avata sakalais anamalatatmani
Abhata sakleshana malatmani
aviratam idhita pavano pahutaha
abhiratam edita bhavano pahutaha
nija janavasa gatvam atmanoyan
nijjanavasa gatvam atmano yan
nasarati chidravad aksara satam hi
nasarti chidravad akshara satam hi.
Word for word translation. Apahata,
Abhata
sakala, all, desires, amala, spotless, atmani, to the mind, aviratam, constant, edhita, increased, bhavana, with feeling, Upahutaha, being
uphold
called,
Upahutaha,
recall
Jana, of his
Nidijana,
devotees,
his devotees,
Vasha, under
Vasha,
the control,
under the control,
Gatvan,
Gatvan,
going,
going,
Atmanaha, his,
Atmanaha, his,
Ayan,
Ayan,
knowing,
knowing,
Na,
Na,
never,
never
never,
Sarati,
treat
goes
Sarati,
away,
goes away,
Chitravat,
Chitrava,
like the sky,
sky
like the sky,
Aksharaha, the
Aksharaha,
Supreme
Aksharaha,
Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Satam, of the
Satam,
devotees,
of the
he,
devotees,
certainly,
certainly,
translation, being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave them for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. Please repeat. Being completely cleansed of all material desires,
being completely cleansed of all material
the
desires,
devotees are freed from all mental contamination.
the devotees are free from all mental contamination.
Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly
Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly
and address him very feelingly.
and address him very feelingly.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead,
knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees,
knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees,
does not leave them for a second,
does not leave them for a
just as
second,
the sky overhead never becomes invisible.
just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible.
Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
It is clear from the previous verse that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana, is very quickly satisfied by the activities of his devotees. The pure devotee is always absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Swakata Krishna. By always thinking of Krishna, the pure devotee's heart is freed from all kinds of desires. In the material world, the heart of the living entity is filled with material desires. When the living entity is cleansed, he does not think of anything material. As the mind is completely cleansed, one attains the perfectional stage of mystic yoga. For then the yogi always sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart. Dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa pashyantiyam yogina. As soon as the Lord is seated within the heart of the devotee cannot be contaminated by the material modes of nature. As long as one is under the control of the material modes, he desires so many things and makes so many plans for material sense enjoyment. But as soon as the Lord is perceived in the heart, all material desires vanish. When the mind is completely free from material desire, the devotee can think of the Lord constantly. In this way, he becomes completely dependent on the lotus feet of the Lord. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prays, Ainandatanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam buddho kripaya tabapada pankaja stita dili shadrisham vichintaya. My dear Lord, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of this material world. Kindly pick me up and fix me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet. Shikshastika verse 5. Similarly, Srila Narottam Das Thakur prays, Aha Prabhu Nanda Sutta Vrishabhanu Sutta Juta Karuna Karaha Evara Naratama Dasakai Natalila Rangapai Toma Vinake Ache Amara. My dear Lord, you are now present with the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. Now both of you, please be merciful upon me. Don't kick me away because I have no shelter other than you. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes dependent on his devotee. The Lord is invincible, yet he is conquered by his pure devotee. He enjoys being dependent on his devotee, just as Krishna enjoyed being dependent on the mercy of Mother Yashoda. Thinking himself dependent on the devotee gives the Supreme Lord great enjoyment. Sometimes a king may engage a joker, and in the process of joking, the king is sometimes insulted. The king, however, enjoys these activities. Everyone worships the Supreme Lord with great reverence. Therefore, the Lord sometimes wants to enjoy the chastisement of his devotees. In this way, the relationship eternally existing between the Lord and his devotees is fixed, just like the sky overhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadāmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Utapadagammalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savaduta Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lilita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Mansakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhuga Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shandavari Vasyataresa Janane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shvasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the translation again, being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Right? So once we're cleansed of all material desires and we're freed from all mental contamination, then thus they can always think of the Lord constantly and address him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing himself to be controlled by his devotees, does not leave them for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible. So the context here is that the Prachetas, or I guess if we zoom back even further, the fourth canto is talking about Sarga, or the primary creation of the elements by Mahavishnu. And so we've gone earlier. There was some description earlier in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, previous cantos. There was some description of the very, very beginning. Lord Brahma comes and there's absolutely nothing there. And slowly we're kind of making our way through the history of the universe from its very beginnings, when there's basically nothing except the causal ocean. And now we're starting to go through this, some of the key parts of history of the Sarga part of the creation. So once we have the physical world that we can see and interact with, and some of the key examples of some great personalities that were there in the earlier stages of the universe. So the Visarga is like the organizing. So Sarga is the primary elements, which we heard about when Mahavishnu is there, and Lord Brahma comes out, and there's basically nothing there. And then the Visarga, is what we're hearing about now, which is where all of those elements have come together to form the physical shape of the material world that we see, the different planets in the universe, different beings created by Lord Brahma, and all of that Visarga is created or shaped using the three modes of material nature. And then now we're seeing here in the fourth canto this focus on the secondary phase of the manifestation of the universe. And we've been hearing about these different genealogies, these different family histories of the different Prajapatis, the different special personalities who have been populating the universe. And we've been hearing about the journeys of some very amazing, great personalities, because these are all journeys that we can learn a lot of lessons from. And at the moment, we're hearing about the Prachetas, the sons of King Prachinabarhi, who we just heard about before. And the story of the Prachetas is kind of coming to a conclusion where they've gone through this whole journey of being the sons of Prachinabarhi, being instructed by their father to become Prajapatis and basically fulfill their duty as progenitors of the universe and rulers and protectors of the people. And then they end up going and doing all severe austerities under the water, 10,000 years, and then they come back and they do their family duty and so on. They've been instructed by Lord Shiva also. They've received instructions a few times, and then they've finally retired from their material life after many, many years, and they are doing some meditation in the ashram, and they've kind of come to this Brahmavad platform. But now Narada Muni has come to remind them of some of the key instructions that Lord Shiva has given them. So it's like showing this transformation or the transition from the karma kanda, where King Prachinabari was very much focused on karma kanda and the fruitive activities. And then we've gone with the prachetas to the extreme levels of tapasya. And now Narada Muni is taking them to the understanding of Shuddha Bhakti, of pure devotional service. And in this verse, there are some very important secrets that are revealed by Narada Muni to the prachetas. And so they're currently in the ashram of Jalaji, this great sage, and they're practicing pranayam yoga. And Narada Muni comes along, and of course they recognize Narada Muni because Narada Muni had also instructed their father. And so they've asked Narada Muni some questions that, please help us to understand. And if you think about it, the last time when they heard the Rudra Gita and when they did all of these austerities and, they got the blessings of Krishna and everything, that was a long time ago, because they've then come back, they've lived their life as a grihasta, they've fulfilled their duties. So many, many years have passed. And so Narada Muni has come to basically give them like a refresher, a quick reminder, a refresher course on what are the most important things that you learned, and perhaps things that you should be reminded of now as you come, closer to the end of your lives. And so in this verse, there are a few key words that we can break down. One of them is the desires, and in this verse they use the word eshana. So eshana, there are in Sanskrit and in the Upanishads. So in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it breaks down this term of eshana, this desires, into three particular categories of eshana. So in this verse, it just says eshana, which is meaning all kinds of desires, any kind of material desires. But the Upanishads break it down into three particular categories. So you have putreshana, so the desire for children, growth, the continuity of your family. And then you have vitteshana, which is any desire for wealth, economic, prosperity, material security, that kind of thing. And the third one is lokeshana. So the desire for fame, prestige, or even the desire for promotion to heavenly planets, that's also included in lokeshana. So these are things that in this verse, Narada Muni is saying that if you have any of this stuff, which basically we are conditioned in such a way that we have a lot of these desires, then it's going to be impossible to achieve complete prema or Shuddha Bhakti. So we have to go through this process of cleaning. So that's Lord Chaitanya Cheto Darpana Marjanam, that we're cleaning our heart of all of the dirt that's accumulated over so many different lifetimes. And it's only once we've cleaned all of that dirt away that then it's a nice, clean, welcome place for Krishna to come and sit. So as long as we have all this dirty stuff in our minds, as long as we're thinking about our own comforts, our own pleasures, our own prosperity, our own wealth, our own, then this mameti consciousness, that this is mine, mameti. So when we do, whenever you see doing yagyas, whenever we do any kind of yagya, we always say, idam Krishnaya, idam na mama, that this is Krishna's, this is not mine. So we're trying to always get rid of this mameti consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya is instructing Rupa Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's this, we hear this instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's telling Rupa Goswami that Nissiddhachar Kutinati Jiva Himsana Labha Puja Pratishtadi Yata Upasaka Gana, that the key things that devotees need to be really careful to avoid in order to develop Krishna Bhakti is they need to avoid Kutinati. Kutinati is diplomacy in the sense of, tricky behavior, a little bit deceitful, acting in a certain way so that you get the outcome that you want. So Kutinati, sometimes we see that amongst devotees, we also have this Kutinati. I have a desire to achieve my ambition. I want service to be done in my way. And so therefore, we're going to say certain things. We're going to befriend certain people. We're going to try and, like in India, I remember like growing up, anytime somebody did this kind of Kutinati style, we would say, Makhan laga raha hai. You're putting butter, you're buttering them up, And so it's like you'll praise someone, you'll give someone special attention. And if somebody doesn't fall prey to that, then maybe you don't give them so much attention, like, oh, I'm not so friendly with you anymore because you're not being manipulated by me enough. But if you're being manipulated by me, then I'll give you a lot. Oh, yes, you're so good, and I'll praise you and all this kind of stuff. So we've got to be really careful both on the giving and the receiving end. That if we're the person doing this Kutinati, then Lord Chaitanya is directly telling Rupa Goswami, you have a low chance of getting Krishna Bhakti if you're doing this kind of stuff. And if we're on the receiving end, we've got to be very careful because we can be misled, we can be manipulated, we can be kind of convinced to act in a certain way. We can convince that this person is right or that person is right. And the reason we can be sometimes convinced is because sometimes those other devotees also have labha, puja, and pratishta. So labha, puja, pratishtadi, yata upasakagana. That labha, the desire for profit. Desire for profit can be whether you're trying to make some money, or it could also be profit in a non-monetary sense. Any kind of way where I'm getting something personally out of this. Then puja, the desire to be worshipped, or the desire to have a lot of respect from people. And that's pratishta, that I want people to respect me. I want people to think, wow, this is such a great devotee, wow, what a wonderful senior person. That we got to be careful, especially as we progress a little bit in Krishna consciousness, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about these different anarthas. And in the very beginning, there are simple anarthas. But as we go along, these anarthas become more subtle and more complex and harder to define, harder to locate, harder to point out. So in the very beginning, you have, Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about, you have anarthas like ganatarala. Ganatarala means like thick and thin. Sometimes you're super, fanatical about your practice, and sometimes you completely reject, or not reject, but you neglect your practice of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you'll have days where you're doing a lot of service and you're super fired up, and then other days where you just don't feel like that at all. And so that's Ganatarla. But later on, as you progress and in Krishna consciousness, these subtle desires that, oh, maybe I've started to feel a little bit of love for Krishna. Maybe I feel like I've studied a lot of scripture. Now I know a lot. And, oh, I've noticed when I talk, people pay a little bit more attention to me, and they think that I'm like a senior person. And these, what sometimes in ISKCON we call the guru disease, comes in, where you start to think, oh, I should become a guru because people are respecting me, and I should, why shouldn't I? Of course, people should respect me. I'm a senior devotee, and so these are kind of subtle things that come in, and the reason that they're subtle and more tricky is because, in one sense, it's not wrong, because yes, Lord Chaitanya is saying Amar Agya like on my order, you go and all become guru. You all teach people about Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada gave that instruction as well. But in another sense, the motivation is a little bit of false ego in there, and so it's very important that we are reflecting on our own intentions, on our own whatever little subtle desires might be lurking there. So, when these people who have this puja pratishta mentality that they want to be worshipped, they want to be respected, then they can start acting in a very sometimes a kind of charismatic and dramatic way, which will inspire people. Maybe they say all kinds of verses so wonderfully, and they can, but lurking in their heart is this desire for prestige, the desire for worship. So you can often tell by their behavior when nobody's around. How do they act when nobody's around? Are they going around? Do they actually go and do some service? Do they do some things when nobody's watching them? Or is it just when a lot of people are there, suddenly now they'll show up and they're very happy to do some, stuff in front of everybody? But at the same time, we should be thinking about these instructions for ourselves, not that we start, you're doing this, you're doing, and I can think of, now Janardan's talking about this, I can think of a lot of examples. This guy, this Prabhu, that Mataji. That no, we should be thinking about me. Do I ever notice that in myself? There's a famous saying about pointing the finger, and it's something that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had repeated, that when you point the finger, 1 is forward, 3 is pointing back at you. So just always remember that, that okay, every time you start thinking about mentally pointing at people, just hold on a second, first let me look at myself. So all of these things, this labha, puja, pratishta, kutinati, all of these things are coming from these eshana, which is pointed out in this verse, these desires. And as long as we have these desires, we will not be able to get Krishna completely. So after Lord Chaitanya gave these instructions to Rupa Goswami later on, he writes himself and further expands on these points. And one of them is Anya Bilashita Shunya Jnana Karma Niravitam Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Uttamam, that Anya Bilashita Shunya, that there should be zero of anything else motivating you. There should be no other kind of material desire for personal gain or personal motivation. So, and that includes subtle desires that seem like spiritual desires. Sometimes we might even find ourselves justifying something in our mind that, oh yeah, but that's like a spiritual desire, so that's okay, but if you really, but if you dig deep enough, you'll find actually it's a desire for my own false ego to be flattered, but I'm dressing it up in a spiritual covering so that it kind of looks, it looks like very nice. And there are other subtle desires that I guess, in ISKCON, maybe we're lucky enough because we've gotten a lot of instructions by Srila Prabhupada, but outside of ISKCON, there are other seemingly spiritual desires, which are a bit more subtle, which people also need to be careful about. And those are the desires for mukti and for siddhis, that if we're searching after liberation, or if we're searching after some kind of mystic perfection, you go to Kumbh Mela, you see these yogis that sometimes, who knows how many, they might have been living for hundreds of years in the mountains. Sometimes some of them are just complete fakes and they're just putting on a show. Maybe bury their head in the sand with a separate pipe or some oxygen under there or whatever, who knows. But some of them, some of them are legitimate. But those guys, like, how much time are they wasting? Maybe they can do all kind of magic tricks. Who knows? How did they even come from the Himalayas to the festival? Maybe they just jumped in the river and they came up from the Himalayas and they came up, at the festival. All kinds of things like this that, amazing. Wow. You can fly in the sky, you can, do all these different cities, you can read people's minds and all that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, what's the point? So even desires for this kind of stuff, they worked for such a long time to get this, but actually these desires are preventing them from getting Krishna bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada points out that when our mind becomes completely cleaned of all of these desires, then that means that naturally we are no longer thinking about anything material, because all those things are completely wiped out. And when that happens, then we're completely freed from any mental contaminations like mental speculation and so on. And that clean mind, the mind is by nature very active. The mind has to be doing something. You can't just keep your mind completely still. So when all material things are out, naturally that means, well, the mind has to be doing something. And if nothing material can be in there, then it has to be something spiritual. So the mind remains active, but it remains actively thinking about Krishna. And so if our mind and heart is filled with these subtle, ashanas, these desires, then, in a sense, you could say, well, it's already occupied territory. It's already full. Where's the space for Krishna to come in there? It's already full up. So you have to like do some, you have to get some removalists in there to just clean out all of the junk. Then you got to make space for Krishna. Otherwise, it's just occupied territory. So Ashana, that was one of the key words in this verse. And then we have aviratam edita bhavana. That edita bhavana, the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is, he has his commentary on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Sarartha Darshini, and he talks about how first the devotee must have a completely purified mind, the Atmani, of all of the Ashanas must be gone. And then it basically makes us a clean vessel, a clean, empty vessel. And it's only when that vessel is clean, the vessel of our mind is clean, that edita bhavana, that our strong emotion for Krishna, our strong desire for Krishna becomes like a powerful magnet that kind of forces the Lord into our minds and our hearts. So once the heart gets cleaned of all these desires, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, then devotees will immediately fill that spotless and empty space with Krishna. They'll fill it. They won't keep it empty. We're not trying to empty our minds. We're not trying to be joined into the void. We need to fill it up with something. And so aviratam means constantly, and then edita means increasing. So aviratam edita, it's constantly increasing bhava. And there's another word in the verse, upahutaha, which is saying to be called or to be summoned. So it's almost like a magnet. It's almost like a strong force that Krishna is compelled to come because he just is so attracted by that. So, sometimes, we might see, imagine if you see like a very cute baby, like a really cute little toddler or something, and they're making funny noises and laughing, and that baby has no power over you. The baby cannot like tackle you and hold you to the ground and tell you have to do what I say. It's just a little baby. You can pick it up with one hand. But sometimes if we see such a cute little baby and it smiles at us or laughs at us, and it's completely dependent on us, and it's completely dependent on our protection as well. We have to look after it and feed it and play with them and everything. Then naturally we feel a sense of attraction that I have to, even though the baby has no physical power over us, we feel, and I want to play with them. I want to laugh. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them smile. When you see the baby happy, it makes you so happy, and you want to feed them and protect them. And so similarly, Krishna, we are like tiny little ants. We're like little babies for Krishna. But when we are showing our love, unconditional love for him, he becomes uncontrollably attracted to that. So when a devotee starts to transition from the Vaidhi Bhakti, practicing devotional service with rules and regulations and out of a sense of duty that I should do this, like I have to do this, otherwise I won't progress, like that kind of an attitude. Once we progress from that Vaidhi Bhakti platform into the Raganuga Bhakti stage, where it's done spontaneously and almost uncontrollably, that just out of pure attraction, then that's when Krishna really becomes attached and attracted to us. So when if we make it to that Raganuga platform, it doesn't mean that suddenly we reject Vaidhi Bhakti. We still continue the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti, but with the spirit of Raganuga Bhakti. Even if we're not there yet, even if we're not on the Raganuga platform, we can still try to think from the perspective of the Raganuga platform. How would I feel? How would I think? How would I act if I was feeling that Raganuga? How would I do my Vaidhi Bhakti? But imagine if I was feeling that I was on the Raganuga platform. What would I be doing? How would I be acting and feeling? So it's almost like, in a sense, and not for public show, because we got to remember this Labha Puja Pratishta, right? We got to be careful of those things. Not for public show, but just privately in our own hearts and minds. Privately, think about it. Like privately fake it till you make it, in a sense. Just like try, because are you going to stay just on the Vaidhi Bhakti stage forever? No, the idea is that Vaidhi Bhakti is supposed to be a mechanism that helps us to understand Krishna better, so that we start to develop real spontaneous love for Krishna. So we need to start practicing it. Otherwise, how are you going to get it? So talk to Krishna as a person, talk to Gaunitai. They're real people. They can really hear us. They can see us. When we come to take darshan, it's actually not us taking darshan. It's them taking darshan of us. They're seeing us. Saying, oh, it's so nice that my devotee has come to see me, right? So we got to treat them like real people, not just as some metal statues that are standing up there. So even if we don't see it and we don't feel it, if we can try and just imagine it and practice from that point of view, that will kind of help us progress towards that stage. And then another part of the verse, Nija Jana Vasagatvam, that this is where the real secret of bhakti comes in, the real secret of prema bhakti, that Nija Jana, of Krishna's own devotees, Vasa, that under the control, Gatvam is going, and Atmana is meaning him, referring to Krishna. And so Krishna, this is in the very beginning of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Krishna is described as Svarat, right? Avidya Svarat. So Svarat means that he is completely independent. He's completely autonomous. Lord Brahma is describing him as Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadi Adi Govindam Sarva Karana Karanam as well. So not only is the beginning, but he's the cause of all causes, right? But now, if Krishna is the cause of all causes, now Narada Muni is saying, actually, no, Krishna is controlled. He's not the supreme controller. He's controlled, but yet he is the supreme controller at the same time. So it's kind of like a paradox that comes up. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his Vivriti and Anubhashya, he talks about this paradox that by complete surrender to the Lord, you gain complete control of the Lord. That it's not that that you can get into this vasagatvam, that the Lord becomes your subordinate. It's not that happens through our own control or mechanical process of following some particular rituals and rules, and then it's like Krishna is like, well, you said those mantras and you followed those rules, now I have no choice. No, we cannot force Krishna to do anything. So the thing about this paradox is if you try to force Krishna, you will never be able to control Krishna. But if you completely give up control to Krishna, if you give all control of your life to Krishna, then Krishna becomes under your control. So it's a very interesting paradox there. And so Lord Chaitanya in his Shikshastakam is saying, Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram, and he says, Tava Pada Pankaja Stita Dulishad Dusham Vichintaya, that I am your eternal servitor, so please pick me up and place me as a speck of dust at your lotus feet, right? So that's complete dependence on Krishna, right? And then Prabhupada references also Narottam Das Thakur in his purport, and that apart from you, I have no other shelter. There's no one else except you. So this idea that please place me as a dust a piece of dust at your lotus feet, and I have no other shelter at you, complete surrender. And when we have this feeling that's called akinchana, when you have this complete feeling of helplessness, of akinchana, then this paradoxically makes the devotee invincible. By becoming completely vulnerable, we become completely invincible. So because Krishna sees that there is this jiva, my devotee, he has given up all attempts to control anything. And if I don't, it's like now we've become like a baby, right? So just like Prabhupada says, we should chant just like a child cries out for his mother, because a child is helpless. If the tiny little baby, if the parent, if nobody helped the baby, he would just die. He can't look after himself. So that's why Prabhupada says we should chant just like a child crying out for his mother. Similarly, when Krishna sees this jiva, this tiny insignificant living entity who's given up attempting to control everything around it, then Krishna feels that, well, if I don't look after him, who's going to look after him? So he feels I have to take personal care of this devotee. So he becomes defeated by our surrender, by our complete surrender. And that's the beautiful paradox of Krishna Prema. This defeat of Krishna is not a loss for Krishna, though. It doesn't diminish his power at all. And in fact, it enhances it, because it enhances the beauty and the sweetness, this internal potency of Krishna, this antaranga shakti. So the pleasure-giving potency of Krishna, specifically talking about I'm getting tongue twisted. Hladini Shakti, Srimati Radharani, right? So represented by Srimati Radharani, that she has power even over Krishna. She can make Krishna do anything. She can twist him around with her little finger. She can make him do anything she wants. He's completely under Srimati Radharani's control. Because why? She's completely surrendered to him. And because of that surrender to him, because of that complete dependence on him, that if Krishna is gone, when Krishna left Vrindavan, when Uddhava came and visited, they basically looked like a ghost town. They were all like skinny, and like their hair, their eyes were like sunken in. They weren't eating properly. They weren't sleeping properly. They couldn't exist without Krishna. So that level of dependence, just, Srimati Radharani is the prime example for this, that Krishna becomes completely under the control. And he does this willingly and joyfully. He absolutely loves it. He submits to the love of his devotee. And Prabhupada talks about how, because Krishna, he knows that he's dependent on his devotee, and this provides Krishna with a great transcendental enjoyment. And so Prabhupada gives this analogy in the purport of the king and the joker, that the joker is sometimes making jokes, sometimes he'll insult the king, but the king is having a laugh. Because imagine if you're the king, everybody's like, oh, Maharaj, whatever. Sometimes you just want some real human interaction. You want some real, something a bit more casual. If everyone's always so formal with you, it gets a bit boring. And so Krishna likes a little bit of that nectar, a little bit of that juice, that rasa. So Prabhupada gives this example, the king and the joker might insult the king, and then sometimes other people in the room might be like, oh, let's see, and this is a bit, I don't know how the king's going to respond. But then the king laughs, and everyone's like, ha, 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 ha. And then they'll also laugh, because the king is like, okay, as long as the king's okay. But the joker is carefree, because he knows that the king enjoys this, and he's there to serve the king. He's not there to take over from the king and become the king himself. And so the joker knows this, and Krishna knows, the joker knows this, and the king knows this, so they can have a particular rasa there, because the joker is not doing it out of like a sense of desire for controlling and becoming and taking the king's position. So, similar to the child example, if anybody here, if you're a father or a mother, and, especially the dads, I know, and I'm kind of like an uncle to a lot of my friends' kids. And, sometimes it's fun to play fight with the kids, you pretend fight with them, and they'll come and they'll hit you. They'll think they're hitting you as so hard. And then you go, oh, you fall over and they laugh and they think it's really funny, right? And so you see how happy that the kid is when you do that, and they think that they're defeating you, and they're so happy with that, and that makes you happy. And so, you know, you have this beautiful kind of interaction that goes on. And so similarly, Krishna has this this desire to be controlled by his devotees, and that's rasa tattva. That's this rasa that we're trying to find. And so yes, in the Vaikuntha planets, in one sense, yeah, that there is some rasa there, but it's always just absolute awe and reverence. And yes, that is pure devotion, but it's got very rigid kind of boundaries that it's you know, limited by. And this awe and reverence, it prevents that higher sense of intimacy and madhurya. And so Krishna is Akila Rasamrita Murti, right? Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. The reservoir of all pleasure cannot simply be limited by any kind of boundary. So he also cannot be limited by the boundary of awe and reverence. So therefore, he willfully, in Vrindavan, with his Vrajvasis, he willfully becomes under the control of his devotees. And then another, this is a more abstract concept of Chidravad Aksharaha. So the sky. So remember, it talks about the Lord becomes inseparable from his devotee, just like we are the sky is inseparable from us, like we can always perceive the sky. So it's a bit of a kind of abstract concept, but if we think about sky as in, or like akash or akshara being like space, right? So if we think about it in scientific terms, then space, we can think about you have 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 dimensions, right? That we can kind of conceive of, right? So 0 dimensions is if you think about what that would be, an existence with 0 dimensions, everything would be a point. It would be a dot, right? If you had 1 dimension, you can have a straight line, right? You'll just see a line. If you have 2 dimensions, you can see a shape like a square. If you have 3 dimensions, now you have length, width, and height. Now that square becomes a cube, or the circle becomes a ball. Now it's 3D, right? So now we live and experience a 3-dimensional space. And 4D, the 4th dimension, becomes time, right? So if we think about it in that, from a scientific perspective, can we imagine being separate from space? Can we imagine ourselves being anywhere outside of space? We can't. Like you can't even imagine it. Like even if you try to think of it, as soon as you think of anything, you're thinking of space. You're thinking of being somewhere where there is space. So it's not possible. So it's actually a really beautiful metaphor that Krishna becomes so attached and connected to his devotee that it's just like you cannot be disconnected from the sky, or in other words, you cannot be disconnected from the concept of space-time. We cannot even imagine being separate from that. So similarly, Krishna is completely bound to his devotee. And so space, in that sense, if Krishna is completely pervading the consciousness of the devotee, then it becomes automatic, it becomes uncontrollable, because there's no room for material desires or material, speculations or anything to even enter the mind. There's no room for it, which means that the only thing that can be there is Krishna. So then that means that Krishna is, when we say that Krishna is always with his devotee, or Krishna is not able to be separated from his devotee, or the devotee is never able to be separated from Krishna, this is what it means. It's because Krishna is always in our heart anyway, Chaitya, Guru, Paramatma, and so on, even in non-devotees' heart, every living entity, right, that Krishna is there. But when a pure devotee is constantly thinking about Krishna, then it's a conscious connection that Krishna and his devotee are consciously always connected and completely inseparable. So can on this kind of point of just sort of to, as we'll finish up, but on this point of Krishna becoming subordinate to his devotees, can you think of any examples, any pastimes where we hear about Krishna becoming subordinate to his devotees? Krishna and Sudama. Okay, yeah. In what way did he become subordinate? Yeah. Well, yeah. There you go. Yeah, good. So Sudama was just a poor Brahmin, but Krishna immediately he was just so enamored by Sudama's devotion that I'll give you everything. And like you said, he washed his feet. He was the king. He was the emperor. He comes and washes this poor guy's feet. Even the maidservants and the queens were like, Krishna, what are you doing? This is, I mean, to some degree, of course, he's a Brahmana we respect, but you're the emperor. I mean, like, how much respect? Like, no, Krishna was all respect, everything. To the gopis also, he said, you've given so much to me. I cannot repay you. The only thing I can give you is literally myself. Because you've given everything to me by giving yourselves to me. So the only thing I can give you in return is also myself. There's nothing else that I can give that can compare. Yeah, that's a good example. Any other examples? Yeah, exactly.
And then you should ask him that there is only a service left. Not say that you have to keep the feet of all the guests.
Yeah. He becomes the chariot driver. He's becoming a assistant in Maharaj Yudhishthir's yagya. Yeah. Then of course we have the Yashoda Damodar pastime. Krishna gets bound by Mother Yashoda, right? And then even in the translation of the Damodarastakam, that he's bound not with ropes but with his mother's pure love. That's what can bind him, not the rope. Any other examples? There was Ambarish Maharaj. So Durvasa Muni, when Ambarish Maharaj, offended by accident Durvasa Muni. Well, Durvasa Muni has a reputation for having a little bit of anger issues, and so Durvasa Muni creates this big, kind of demon to kill or chastise Ambarish, and Krishna immediately sends his Sudarshan Chakra and is chasing Durvasa Muni all over the universe. When Durvasa Muni finally goes to Krishna and asks for protection, goes to Vishnu, asks for protection, and Vishnu says, Aham Bhakta Pradahino, Hyasvatantra Iva Dvija, that he's like, I'm completely under the control of my devotees. I'm not independent. If you want to get free from this, even I can't. You have to go and ask, you have to ask Ambarish. You can't ask me. I don't know. Because he says that at one point, I think he says to the 4 Kumaras, I think it was, he's like, I would cut off my own arm to help the devotee. I would give myself, literally, I would do anything I can to protect my devotee. Along the same line of the Mahabharata, not only was Krishna's chariot driver, but he also was ready to break his promise and ruin his own reputation to protect his devotee. So he goes and picks up the wheel and starts charging at Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is looking at this and just praying like how wonderful that is. And even when he's lying on the bed of arrows, I just want to see that beautiful form of yours charging at me with blood coming down your face, and your hair is all pushed back and sweating, and there's sweat coming down, and you're charging at me. Is like, that's so beautiful. I just want to see that vision when I pass. Why? It's not only like, Veeras, I just want to fight with Krishna or whatever. No, it's like, it's what that represents. He was seeing how beautiful that is, that Krishna, he made a promise and he was breaking that promise. He was ready to completely ruin his reputation just to protect Arjuna. Then we have Bali Maharaj and Vamana Dev, right? The Vamana Dev ended up becoming the gatekeeper of Bali Maharaj. We have that one example that I really like is Shrutadev and Baulashva. That we have Shrutadev was this poor Brahmin, and Baulashva was the king of Videha, which the capital of Videha is Mithila, the famous city of Mithila, where Sita Devi was from. So he was the king of this whole place and living in the capital of Mithila, and Shrutadev was a poor Brahmin who also lived there. So Krishna comes along with Narada Muni and Vyasadeva and, Maitreya Muni and Brihaspati and, Sukadev and Asita and all kinds of, I think even Parashuram was there, like all these great, great sages, and Krishna goes there. And Shrutadev, the poor Brahmin, and Baulashva, the king, both come at the same time, and they both worship Krishna, and they both invite him to their house. So please come to my house, please, please, please. And then what's Krishna going to do? They're both his devotees. He's torn. So what does he do in a situation where he's obliged to do what his devotee wants, but two of them at the same time want him each to go to their house? So what does he do? Anybody know?
Expand himself.
Yeah, he expanded himself, and he even expanded all of those other sages that were with him. So there's like 2 Narada Munis, 2 Krishnas, 2 Parashurams, 2 all, and so then a whole group of them went to Shrutadev's house, and a whole group of them went to Baulashva's house. And each one of them thought, I'm so fortunate Krishna chose me and came to my house, right? So can anyone think of any examples, other examples where Krishna also expanded himself like that?
In case of all his 16,108 wives, he expanded.
Yeah, so he expanded himself and even had 16,108 palaces. And Narada Muni came one time, was like, wow, this is amazing, because he keeps going to different palaces and he keeps seeing Krishna is there, he's doing different activities in each one just to please all of his devotees. Any other ones where Krishna expanded himself? Yeah, Brahma Vimohan Lila. He expands himself into all the different boys, and not even the boys, even the animals. He expands himself into the cows, just because he's worried that what are the parents going to think? They're all my devotees. What are they going to think when I came back and I lost them all? So he's so worried. He's like, oh, I have to fix this. And so he's so worried that he's like subservient to his own devotees, that he's got to do anything for them. Then, of course, there's the rasa dance. He expands himself so that all the gopis are thinking that Krishna is dancing with me, right? Then there's then another example, not of expansion, but Krishna coming under the control of the devotee, or being the devotee servant as Draupadi, right? When her sari is being pulled, and when it's at what point? It's when she completely surrenders, complete surrender. So you remember, that's the paradox. Complete surrender gives you complete victory. So if we can purge our hearts and our minds of these subtle desires, of these eshanas, and replace it constantly with Krishna, then by the paradoxical complete surrender, we gain complete and ultimate victory. And so the way that we get this complete victory in this age of Kali is Param Vijayate. Yeah, Sri Krishna Sankirtan. So that's how we fill our minds and our hearts with Krishna, is through Sankirtan. And through that Sankirtan, the Sankirtan does 2 things. Not only it fills our mind with Krishna, but it also pushes out the unnecessary things from our mind. So in this age, the way to achieve this, what Narada Muni is saying to the Prachetas, a way to achieve this Param Vijayate is through Sri Krishna Sankirtan in Kali Yuga. All right, thank you very much. Any comments or questions before we finish up?
What about how we have to clean it completely to attract Krishna? But we cannot clean it by ourselves. We need Krishna to come clean. So how do we apply practical?
That because we can't clean ourselves, so we
need Krishna to clean someone.
Yeah.
But unless it's cleansed, Krishna won't be there. So that's the paradox.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, but it also isn't, because because the process is a process of surrender, and the process of Sharanagati, that it's not that it only starts when we have achieved it. It starts, like, the process and the goal are kind of the same. So it's not that you can only start bhakti once you've achieved bhakti, because that's the paradox. You can't start once you've already achieved it. You have to start from somewhere. So that means slowly, step by step, we try and surrender a little bit more, like Draupadi, put our hands up in the sky a little bit more and just say, well, I can't really control it. Krishna, you can control it. And then stuff will happen, and things will happen, and we will think of something or we'll do something, and then but it's just a process. Bring our mind back, say, Krishna, I'm sorry about that, you know where I'm at, I'm trying to do better, and some gradual little step-by-step improvements. Like, don't beat ourselves up about it. We just we can't be perfect overnight. I mean, we're talking about great personalities like Lord Brahma and the Prachetas and Daksha and all these people who, struggling to get through it all. All right.
How we spoke about, sometimes we try to say nice things to some people and have that discrimination when we behave with people for our own advantage. When we see that happen within ourselves, because it's our comfort zone, we go with people who are comfortable with when we are actually among devotees everywhere. So practically, what do we pray to Krishna to get out of it? Like, how do we come out of that sort of that's not before devotional service, but how do we come out?
Well, I think it just requires constant self-reflection. That what are my motivations? It's when Anya Bilasita Shunya means, like, what are my motivations? When I'm doing something, am I doing it for any kind of motivation? Do I want to have a good relationship with this person because they have a good power or position? Or am I want to have a good relationship with them because I personally like them and I want to feel, the friendship and the relationship there? So, and the other part of it, I think, is being careful not to be misled and manipulated.
Haribo, sorry everyone, that's clearly the end. We've been either cut off, or that might be the end of.
I think it was suddenly cut off. Maybe something to do with the internet.
Yeah, or I'm thinking that might be the ending of the YouTube.
Okay, yeah, they must
recording.
be talking among themselves, not to Zoom.
Haribo, thank you.
Haribo.
I'll end the class. Haribo.
Hare Krishna, Haribo.